Hospital in Drumskin, Dundalk, County Louth, Ireland from 2004 to 2007. He sits on the board of many organizations. As a director, his research interest is in celiac disease and osteoporosis. He has collaborated with the Ion Channel Biotechnology Unit, DKIT Dundalk, for celiac disease. He has also done a number of clinical trials for anti-dementia, antibiotic, anti-epileptic, and anti-hypersensitive drugs in Ireland. Professor Mahapatra is the clinical director of the DEXA-Scan and Bone Metabolism Biomed Unit in Dundalk, County Louth, and works as a medical director in General Internal Medicine 2SJOG Unit, Voluntary Group Hospital in the Northeast, St. Mary's Hospital, and as a medical director, HSE Unit, Louth County Hospital, Dublin, HSC North East Group. Dundalk Mahapatra has an office-based private practice for general internal medicine, gastroenterology, and for 24 hours cardiac Holter monitoring services in Lou Medical Center in Dundalk. He has many research papers with presentations nationally and internationally. Professor Mahapatra is an examiner and mentor for the nurse prescribers, St. Mary's Hospital at the Royal College of Surgeons of Ireland. Professor Mahapatra does community service and was the founder president of the Uria Society of Ireland and is vice president of VHCCI and is an executive committee member of the Dromiskin Security and Development Program of Dundalk. And he is a member of Esther Ireland to promote health initiatives in partner medical institutions globally. He is a member of the Society of Physician Entrepreneurs International, USA. He is the chairman of Confederation of Indian Communities in Ireland. Dr. Mahapatra has been involved actively with the charities for over 25 years and is also involved in fundraising and intercultural events in Dundalk and Dublin. Dr. Mahapatra has given public lectures in Dundalk on osteoporosis, which is a silent disease, until a fracture is sustained. In a local church in Dundalk, Dr. Mahapatra has given a public lecture on innovation as an invited speaker organized through the Indian Embassy. Professor Mahapatra is the medical advisor to the Special Olympic team of St. Mary's Hospital. Drumcar is actively involved as an executive committee member with DTA for providing security measures via telephone and text messages to the residents of Dromiskin, especially those living on their own. He is the president of Vishwa Hindu Parishad Ireland and is the chair of Indology Foundation Europe. He is the chairman of the Northeast chapter of CICI and Kalinga Academy of Social Sciences Ireland and Peace Commissioner, Justice of Peace for County Louth and adjoining counties appointed by the Ministry of Justice, Government of Ireland. Dr. Mahapatra has been actively involved in politics in Louth area for a number of years for improving the health services delivery in Dundalk to the community in the catchment area by providing acute services from the Louth County Hospital campus. Professor Mahapatra became a Lord Baron of Bridlesford feudal barony situated in the Isle of Wight, County Hampshire in England. The manorial estate was tenanted out to Charles Griffin in 1923, and currently his granddaughter, Louis Griffin, is looking after it. Details of the rent rolls of the estate is preserved in the National Archives in Kews, England. Professor Mahapatra is an external COVID-19 advisor to the Patajoshi Temple Office in Puri and has advised to Patajoshi and Gajapati Maharaj of Puri regarding conducting a safe Rath Yatra during the COVID pandemic in Odisha. Professor Mahapatra recently gathered experience in representative politics by standing and campaigning as an independent candidate for a MEP seat from the Midlands Northwest European constituency. He intends to run again for a TD seat from the Louth constituency at the next general election with accumulated political wisdom gained through communicating with other candidates, the voting pattern of party supporters and overall performance of parties at the MEP and local elections. So Mahapatra ji is very keen to establish a very high-tech stem cell institute of regenerative medicine with cutting-edge technology in Bhubaneswar, Orissa. A group of eminent scientists have been formed. So this is something about Mahapatra ji. So now may I request Mahapatra sir to share his scholarly observation with us. Please, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Gunjan Agarwal ji, for such an eloquent introduction. And I also like to thank our moderator for today, Professor Sarma as well. It's a pleasure, and I feel so honored to be part of this webinar program, which has been arranged through the Soviet University in Gango in Uttar Pradesh, India. And I would like to start today with my first introductory slide, and I'll just put it onto the screen. What we are going to do today is we are going to touch some of the salient features of how to manage stress, and to go from there. The other spectrum is anxiety and depression, especially in the student population, which is called exam blues. And this is something which does not affect everybody, So once I say about this, it is only a small percentage of our students and other workers who would actually suffer from this. As Professor Agarwal has mentioned previously, that stress is good, but there's a positive and a negative stress. So positive stress is good for us, and we need to actually balance it out, the positivity of the stress with the negativity of the stress. And when we hold a good balance, then everything flows okay. That means we can actually cope with this, and this coping mechanism is inbuilt. And we go on to the next slide, where I will show you. Can everybody see the slides, please? Hello? Can everybody see the slides?
Yes, sir, the slide is visible. Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Now we go on to the next slide. So let me start with explaining, what is stress. This can be said as any type of change which causes physical, emotional, or psychological strain. So basically, it is a all-round sort of happening which actually occurs to us during some time of our life. No, it is not a continual system. If it's a continual, then there's a problem. But acute stress, everybody suffers from that from time to time, and it's perfectly normal. We get over that. We get over with the coping mechanism, which I'll explain later. And the response to the stress makes the difference, because different people are actually attuned to different way of coping with stress. So how we make a proper response to stress is going to change the modality of us going through stress, and how we actually kind of manage it. So what we do now, we need to talk about the mental and physical health that is affected by the stress level. If the stress level is higher, the more you get the physical signs of health and the mental signs of health. And that's how the next part would be to cope with the stress, which is a very important part, because that will actually signal out how we go along the different pathways to cope with this mechanism. So the common signs of stress are changes in mood and labile mood swings. And what we do with this is a general sense of making a definitive what you call a picture there, where we actually say that coping with stress is a fundamental biological mechanism in humans, which deals with all types of stress, whether it will be emotional or physical. The normal response is the flight or fight mechanism where you approach a person who is willing to fight or face up or escape. These are the two routes we have there. And as I mentioned previously, people have various ways of dealing with it in their day-to-day life situation. And that's how we go to the next slide, which is very, I actually selected this slide because it explains a bit of stress among the student population. And if you look carefully at this slide, you will see that this young girl is actually holding her head. You'll see that in the center, she is holding her head. She has got a cup and a saucer there. And obviously she is drinking tea or coffee, which contains caffeine, okay? And then on either side, you see piles of books. So when you see this picture, it strikes that what sort of a stress level a student can face, or any other person who's into a work situation which deals with a lot of reading or presentation and those sort of things. So this is where the whole picture is about, and it sums up nicely about stress and how it affects the younger population. So let us speak about the common signs of stress. One of the physical things I've noticed in stress is that the clammy or sweaty palms, you get a lot of moisture on your palms, it gets very sweaty. And the other thing is the difficulty in sleeping, which is known as insomnia, and feeling anxious. People can suffer from severe bout of headaches. They can also have a very low energy level. Some will also complain of muscle tension, and especially at the shoulder muscles and the neck muscles are affected with this, and it can continue for a long time because a short span of the muscle tension can be actually worked out very quickly. But if it continues for a long time, then you would need some medication to relieve it, or even heat massage. Sometimes the heat massage will do the trick. Then another important point to mention is the trembling, because the cortisol level goes very high up in the body with the stress, and it can result in trembling and also tachycardia, which is racing heartbeat. So you can actually get that, can produce bouts of dizziness. There's a digestive problem associated with it. Some people will go off their meals, which we call anorexia, or start indulging in overeating, so they'll put on weight. So either they will lose weight during stress, or they'll put on weight depending on which way they go. Then there's also a complaint of frequent sickness and anger outburst. Anger outburst is one of the things that is very important, because it not only affects the person who is actually having this anger outburst, but it affects the people against whom this anger outburst occurs. So there are 2 or 3 people who are involved in this, and if not 3, at least 2 are involved in this. One is the target person, and one is who's doing the abusing. So these two needs to be looked at. Then identifying stress, which is also important, because you need to know that how and where you are getting the stress symptoms or signs. And this is how you actually look at experiencing too much pressure. So it could be a pressure from the family or a peer pressure. So you have to look into that and deal with it accordingly. Then the difficulty in concentrating, because the difficulty in concentrating can actually go and do a lot of damage, especially when you are preparing for exam. If you are preparing for exam, you have to concentrate on the subjects you are preparing. And if there's a difficulty, it automatically affects your exam preparation. So this has to be looked at very minutely and sorted out. Everything has a solution. So there's nothing to worry. We are going through this, and I will actually mention about the solutions we have for this. And then we have worrying and being anxious. Worrying and being anxious is a normal part of human psychology and physiology. Everybody worries sometime in their life and gets anxious about something. It is perfectly normal. But if it continues to stay from the acute stage to goes to chronic stage, then it needs treatment, because it's abnormal. It becomes abnormal. The other feature of stress is actually the trouble in remembering. means you do read something or read a para or you read a page or something, and then you have trouble to assimilate and remember that. So these are the high cognitive function which is affected by stress, and this happens because of a high level of stress. It can also result in a very irritated, and a moody spell where you don't want to talk to someone in the family or among a group of friends or colleagues, and you sometimes will snap at them, you'll have short bouts of snapping. So that needs to be also identified as a sign of stress. The physiological condition which goes with this, because it has a bearing on immune complexes in the body, is a frequent bout of colds and infection. So if you get frequent bout of colds and infection, you could possibly be stressed. It's a silent feature of stress, so that has to be worked at. Then, as I mentioned previously, changes in body weight. So it can go down or come up depending on your food intake. Anorexics, they will avoid food and they will lose weight, whereas the people who will overeat will gain weight during a course of time. One thing I've noticed among this group of or cohort of population is poor self-care. They don't look after themselves, so they will have a very shabby appearance because they have not given enough time to their personal grooming and personal appearance, so this is also an indicator of stress. Then isolating from the friends and family because they don't want to communicate, so they will naturally isolate from their close friends and family to hide it, because sometimes they'll hide their stress, the signs, so they don't want to intermingle too much with their close friends or family because they know them best, they're going to pick it up, so they want to avoid that. And then finally they will lose interest in the natural hobbies which they will follow, and sports. If they're active people who are doing active sports and outdoor sports, suddenly they will lose interest. They don't want to do anything, and that's how it goes about it. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, this technical problem as usual. Causes of stress. This is another thing we have to look, which is the work or the study overload. Work can be differential. People are working in offices or something like that, but it can also mean people in the universities, especially the student cohort, who would actually be subjected to this. So one has to look into this. Financial difficulties is another big thing. I am not sure about what's happening in your university, but in our university in Ireland, nearly 95% of the students take loan. They take bank loans. So they tend to worry, especially if they're not getting the grades, they're not achieving the grades. They tend to worry about this financial problem because they are not too sure whether they'll get a job and how they're going to pay back. Because in the Western culture, the students especially are very independent after 16 years of age. They decide the course of activities, what to do. Parents are there, but the parents will only help if required. But mostly they don't want any help. They don't want any sort of actions to be taken by their peers or family if they can help it. So they're fairly independent. So that is one of the big problem facing youngsters here in the universities, where the financial difficulties play a major role. The next is relationship. Now, as you know, in stress, the relationship is actually the first one to look at, because it suffers a lot, whether it is within a family, outside a family, among the colleagues or workmates, or among friends, that stretches out with the stress and anxiety. So that needs to be looked at. A repair mechanism are there, and you can do that. Now, the parenting and domestic stress is something else which also needs to be mentioned, because there are two features to it. We have graduate programs here in Ireland. I'm sure you have it in India, where the person actually has a graduate degree, is working, or might be married, might have kids, and then go back to a full-time education. In that situation, there's a lot of difficulty the person faces as as a parent and domestic stress. So that needs to look at. Then, of course, with this, we have a day-to-day inconveniences where small things can actually flare up to big problems, So we need to keep them under check, because if we do not do that, then it will becomes a major issue, So we don't want to go that route. Then there's a mechanism, as I said, which is biological, and it differs from person to person, that there is a delay in the fight or flight response leading to chronic stress, because this is how we actually work. If a group is there, wants to face up to the problems and fight it out, so be it. Then the acute stress is managed and it doesn't have to go to a chronic stress. And then there is another group who don't want to face up to their stress. They want to escape from it, And that escape mechanism does not work all the time. So that also leads, that's another pathway which leads to chronic stress. Then, as I mentioned earlier, the unhealthy eating habits. If you don't eat well and don't hydrate yourself by drinking plenty of water or any other fluids, then you would have problem, because the mind, the consciousness is linked to a healthy body. If the body is not healthy, automatically the mind won't be healthy. So that link has to be also looked at. There is a lot of addiction to nicotine among our student population and also among the adults. Alcohol or substance abuse. Alcohol abuse in Ireland is a major issue. We are looking into it, and we are trying to find ways and means to get a bit of a control on this. It's a cultural habit, and you will be astonished to know, next to Scotland, the per capita consumption of alcohol in Europe is highest in Ireland, next to Scotland. Scotland is number 1 and Ireland is number 2. That's the way to look at that picture. Then the persistent negative thoughts. Mind you, negative thoughts can be good, because sometimes that will lead you to positive thoughts, okay? But if it's a temporary mechanism, it is something you're not to worry. But persistent negative thoughts, that you are not at all thinking anything positive. Constantly you are criticizing someone, constantly you are finding faults with someone, and constantly you are making yourself or taking yourself into a picture where you are saying you are not able to cope or do anything. It's beyond me. I cannot do anything. I cannot do even the smallest thing, is assigned to me. That is persistent negative thoughts, and one should actually think about it, that it is a cause of stress, and you need to look into that. Then physiological condition I need to mention, which are the diseases, the chronic diseases, like diabetes, heart disease, arthritis. Mind you, arthritis is a very painful condition. So if somebody is suffering from osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, or gouty arthritis, all painful conditions. And it can also lead to a huge amount of stress, because coping with the pain is a different reaction, and it's linked to feeling depressed and anxious about it. So this is one of the things one has to look at. And I was just, yeah, I got the slide. So let us now talk about the types of stress. Not all types of stress are harmful, as I mentioned before. The acute stress is a short-term feature, and the distressing response is actually to day-to-day life. So it's a short period of stress, and mostly it is related to how we are living, what we are doing in the present. It's not, we are not thinking about the past or the future. We are just thinking about the present. So this is one of the things we have to look at. But the good thing about it, nearly all, if not all, they will cope with this, and this will gradually diminish. The acute stress will diminish and they become normal. And this itself, if it's diminishing in a few days or a week, is not to be considered as a chronic stress, because it's temporary only. So it will just go its own way. Now, the chronic stress, by its definition, is never ending. It's a excessive, for example, excessive workload that can bring this about. The job, not all people actually are on a desk job. Even on a desk job, it could be very tiring, but a lot of people are on physical jobs as well, so it can be very tiring for them. For example, here I can say the security guards. It's a very tiring job for them. They do duty at night, so the diurnal sleeping pattern is also changed, because they are awake at night and they sleep during the day. So those sort of things. The other one is the marital disharmony. This is a worldwide topic, some marriages work out very well, some actually do not work out very well, and some are somewhere in the middle. So the ones where there's a lot of disharmony and mismatch between the partners or the spouses, there's a huge amount of stress involved with that, So one has to look into that and find solutions. Now, the traumatic experience is another thing we look at, because that can also result into stress, anxiety buildup over a period of time, especially if it had happened in childhood. If this experience was correlated in childhood, then it will spring up sometime later as a stress feature. So sometimes acute stress can become chronic due to failure of the coping mechanism and the adjustment necessary. So as I mentioned earlier, what happens to us is that we can have a gradation, where we are actually going from one set of stress and then gliding through it for a certain period of time. Then we are going to the next set, and then we are going again gliding, and then going to the final one, something like that. If we step down, then you are heading in the right direction. That means the levels are coming down. But if this is happening in a step up, that means the step ladder thing, and is going step up, then it's not good for you, because that actually will result over a period of time what we call a burnout syndrome. Burnout syndrome affects us. It's a high, what you call, stressful job for the physicians who work, for the doctors, for the nurses, for the surgeons, and it's very common among our population. We get a burnt out if you don't take breaks. So it is a very important thing that you need to take breaks, you need to take holidays from time to time to de-stress. So this is one of the things I wanted to mention. Anxiety disorders are there. There's a general anxiety disorder, which affects a number of people within a set population. And that again will impact your stress level, so that needs to actually looked at. There are obsessive patterns as well, so you need to look at that, because hand washing, for example, is a common thing. It becomes very obsessive and can also lead to a stressful situation, because the skin of the hand dries up, the soap water effect, and you need to look into that. But thankfully, during the COVID-19, we have hand sanitizers, which are not that cruel to our skin. So we can do multiple hand washes using the hand sanitizers, which is available to us on the market. I have seen also the people who stress, especially the women, I've seen, because there's a slight shift in the stress mechanism. The women are less able to cope with stress than men. So there is a slightly more population of women who actually come with this disorder, who are actually impacted more with stress. So there's a hair loss, which is to be seen. If there's no other medical cause of hair loss, this has to be looked at. If they're present in a general practice, with loss of hair, this is one of the conditions we look at. So you ask leading question to the patient. Then heart disease. Heart disease by itself is chronic, and it can also lead to impacting your stress level. Obesity. Obesity has two features. One is the actual obesity, where you are actually putting on a lot of weight, and the other is perceptual obesity, where you are not putting on weight, but you think you are putting on weight, okay? Especially in the teenage girls, this is a big problem. The image is affected because of the obesity. And so they don't want to go through this cycle. And even if they put a few pounds, they get very stressed out, because there's an image related problem with this. So this is one of the things to look at. Because of the stress, there is a change in gastric acidity in the stomach. The balance changes. We pour a bit more hydrochloric acid, which is the gastric acid, that's in the stomach for digestion of food, that when it gets high, it will start its effect on the mucosa. So you get gastric ulcer. So gastric ulcer is related to that. So it is not uncommon to find people with stress complaining of stomach pain. And the stomach pain could be due to the gastric ulcers, which are basically the gastric ulcer, the stomach ulcer, and the duodenal ulcer, which is a part of the peptic ulcer disease syndrome. So we get this. Then there is hyperthyroidism because of the stress. The thyroid gland actually pours more of its active hormones, so you get hyperthyroidism because of that. And most of the common feature is linked to your blood pressure, hypertension. When you get stressed, even an ordinary person would say, I'm getting headaches. The headaches could be temporary hypertension. His blood pressure might have gone up, and that's causing the hypertension. And everybody is knowing about the frustration, because the frustration level goes up, is the impact of stress, and it can lead to depressive episodes. Depressive episodes can be labile or intermittent. If it's intermittent, it is much more amenable to treatment. But if it becomes very labile and intense, then it will need more specialist help to deal with it. Now, sudden death, if an underlying heart condition is present, especially during an argument, when you're actually having a very heated argument and the patient or the person has a heart condition, has to be very careful, because it has been reported that during this very heated verbal arguments, you can have a heart attack. So one has to look into that. We talk a bit about anxiety, because so far we have been talking about stress. So let's bring in, because this is a part of the spectrum. Stress, anxiety, and depression, this goes hand in hand. So, and the depression is the exam blues, especially it can be also said as college blues, because that happens when you actually get depressed. So what is anxiety? The anxiety is a feeling of unease, such as worry or a fear that can be mild or severe. So you can have a general unease, which is very mild, or you can go into the other side of the spectrum where you can have severe bouts of anxiety. So these two can happen. Then there's anxiety about sitting an exam. So this is actually something that affects our students, which is quite common. A few days before the exam, and it settles down after the exam. When you have done well, you feel very happy, it settles down. But sometimes it can continue for a longer time, so we'll talk about that. Then other things like having a medical test or a job interview. These are something which you call settling anxiety, which actually settles down, is normal, is temporary. What if it remains after the event, and then it is or we can be comfortable in saying that this is not normal. It needs further investigation to find out why this is happening, and then the interventions are there, the solutions are there, which can be put forward. So what are the symptoms? The symptoms would be one thing which I see here, and I'm sure a lot of people in India will be affected with that, is the panic disorder. The panic disorder is something that needs to be treated because that affects work and exams. So that needs to be considered. And I mentioned about the general anxiety disorder that manifests in the population as such and among the students as well. Then we need to consider about the phobias, because that needs to be dealt with, especially if somebody has agoraphobia, which is basically a fear of heights, So going in a lift or going up the stairs, going to top part of the building, those sort of things can cause problem. The other is claustrophobia. I've seen some students, will come in for a request to do up a note for them. They can sit the exam on their own because they get very claustrophobic if they're sitting in a group and giving an exam or doing a test, so that's claustrophobia. So one has to look at this. The post-traumatic stress disorders are also there, which needs to be considered. The trauma can be recent or can be a childhood trauma, which is carrying on. So that has to be looked at. Nowadays, we have a lot of social anxiety as well. The social anxiety can be manifested in very in multiple forms. And one of the thing I find is bullying activity is a cyberbullying. So everybody has a smartphone, and they are subjected to that. So cyberbullying is also a part of social anxiety. So you can bully a person and make the person very anxious about the day-to-day happening and his aspect of what is going on, and those sort of things. Let's go to this. Okay, no, yeah. So now coming to the examination blues, this is basically something that needs to be looked at very closely, especially for our peers in the universities. Maybe they are lecturers or assistant professors, associate or full professors in the department, because they need to know about this, and I'm sure a lot of them have been exposed to it, and a lot of them actually know about this, and they can be the mentors and the peers for the students they're supervising, especially close supervision for PhD students. If somebody doing a PhD, you are actually being a very close supervisor to them. So you need to look at that, how the student behaves, and the analogy, how they're getting on. So the way I actually say is, how do you survive college exams? Because this, you need to go through the stages. So the exam preparation needs to be done right, and you need to get ready for it, and you have to print or write notes, and don't leave it till the end or till the 11th hour, because everything is overwhelming then. So it has to be a planned structure. You talk to your lecturer, you make a study plan, avoid comparing yourself to your friends, because this again puts a lot of peer pressure. Oh, I'm not as good as my friend is, he scores much more highly than me. It's an individual thing, don't have to compare, All you have to do is to focus on yourself, to go through the exam process and get your grades. Don't worry who's topping the class, who's not, and who is better than you, who's not, because that only will add a lot of pressure on you and will bring you into a situation of stress. So we don't want that. And sometimes you get anxious, you get depressed, you avoid then, you don't want to sit for exam or something like that. So you don't do. And then I find the most important thing that is the best in this situation is to give sufficient time to your studies. If you are studying throughout the year and you are giving sufficient time to your study and setting up a good study methodology, that you are putting in these sort of hours during your day, whether it be morning, afternoon, evening, or at night, do so. But do a gradual sort of system where you can actually yourself decide on how many numbers of hours you want to spend every day on your studies, instead of cramming at the very end, which is a very stressful situation. Then I find a lot of people, actually the undergraduate students, they cut, the studies. They think that this bit is in the syllabus is not going to come. The questions might actually surprise you. The ones you have not studied, the question might actually come from that very material you have cut or left out. So this is one of the things you should avoid. You should study the whole subject from A to Z, because then only you are sure that you will have a reasonable chance of actually scoring well, because you have done everything that needs to be done. But if you are selective, then you are chancing it. If you get that question you have studied, so be it, good, you have done well. But if you don't get it, then you are at a disadvantage, because simply it's a blank in your mind. You have not touched that subject at all. So that you need to do. As I mentioned, study at your own space without any distraction, because distraction can cause a lot of problems. So my suggestion would be, do not browse the net, while you're studying, because if you're getting some information from the net, so be it. But do not multitask, you're studying at the same time you're answering a lot of things. You are getting what you call text messages from your friends or something, or you are in the social media. Do not do things simultaneously. Leave it apart for a certain period of the day, and you can do that. But when you are studying, concentrate fully on your studies and know what works for you, because people are different. Some people will actually absorb a lot within a short course of time while studying. Some will not, and they have to actually do more studies or put more hours to actually have that same capacity built up to absorb the knowledge, so that you need to do. I find it's a good experience to condense your notes, because if you condense your notes, then you are actually getting a lot of benefit with the fewer space occupying, That means you can expand it when the exam comes from the condensed note, you can actually expand. So remembering will be a good thing to do with this, and it'll be a very helpful exam technique. And of course, this can lead to, especially if you are doing everything at the last hour, it can lead to exam stress. So keeping calm and focused is a must for everybody, and keeping calm and focused will lend a big hand to exam preparation. So one has to look into that. And then coming to our next thing is as I mentioned, the social media. You need to actually detach yourself from the social media while you are studying. Social media things are not going to go away. They'll be still loaded there. You can download or you can upload your messages. It'll still be there. So wait for it. Don't mix it up when you are studying. So it can be done, but youngsters are youngsters. They will carry on doing a lot of things together. But it is our advice that do not do it. Separate it out, because it can easily distract you. Then preparing for the exam day. These are some of the things which has happened, because as an examiner, I find the student has come late for the examination. And why it happens? Because of these following things. Check the timetable, which is very important. The exam timetable said it is given to you by the college or the university. So please do check it, read it carefully, read your location. Don't land up in the wrong location, because when you have these exams, you will have multiple exams in the same center or different rooms. So you need to know exactly where center is, where the room is, and you appear there, So that needs to be looked at. Make sure you are allocated enough time to all the questions during the exam, because what is a tendency is that, okay, I'll do this, I know this, and I'll keep on writing whatever I need to write and expend a lot of time on that. You don't get any extra mark by actually putting in so much information there. You need only the standard information to answer a question, and that will get you through. So what happens with this is that then they realize there are 5 questions more and there's no time, because they have spent so much time on a single question. So before you start this, look through your questions and allocate the time. You'll have a reasonable sort of idea that I need to put so much time for this question, so much time for that question, and that's the way to go about it. So it is a common phenomenon. Most of us do it. I have also done it during my exam. Start with the questions which is easy to answer first. Why? Because easy to answer, it settles you down. You are not under stress, because you have read that well. That question you can answer very well. Start with that, but don't expand it. Finish it up quickly. So during the exam, the other things which can help you is to take a deep breath and relax before you look at the exam paper. Where sometimes you are floored looking at 10 questions or more, and you get very anxious. Don't. Take a deep breath, relax, and look casually at the exam paper, and then everything will set in gradually. And as I mentioned, time allocation to each question is a must, and you should decide. Ask the invigilator if you have any queries. Do not feel shy, because that brings in a lot of stress and anxiety. If you have any queries, there's an invigilator in the room, so go and ask him or her, and you will get all the help you need. And I've seen a cohort of the students who give up. My message to them is don't give up. There is something in the questions you can answer. It's not that it is a blank page you will return, You will put in something. So don't give up. Try to think positively, and hopefully the preparation memories will come back. Because if you are actually pushing a bit of strain at that time on your brain and keeping calm, it's not a blank paper you will submit, because something will come up. So don't give up. Try to attempt all the questions and the answers will come up. Okay. Then, if you are feeling stressed about the exam, then what you need to do is to talk to your classmates, friends, close friends, or a family member. Lecturer or teacher are very helpful because they are there always to help you. So you need to actually approach one of your lecturer or teacher and open up, talk to them about the problem you are having. I'm sure they will find a solution. The college counselor is actually one of the best person to talk to, because the college counselor may have some training in psychology. So they will grasp immediately. So that's one of the person you need to talk to. Medical or the health center staff. Some of the health center staff would have a medical officer there, a university medical officer or a college medical officer. So you get a medical advice immediately. Then the college university office staff would have a general knowledge of any administrative problem that is affecting you. So do talk to them. Legal guardian, sometimes the parents are not there, you have a legal guardian. You can also talk to them about your problems, and all the solutions to your problems can be found. The communication, as I say, is a very effective way to reduce stress and anxiety. Even by talking, even if you are not finding a solution there and then, by correlating, by actually putting out your communication channel, you are actually reducing your stress and anxiety. So at least do open up, do talk to somebody, and these things can actually go in your favor. So what are the practical de-stressing? As I told you before, I'm telling you a bit in a detail, and these are the things we need to do. In our culture, and during the Vedic times, a lot of this was practiced by rishis and munis. Take deep breaths, hold for 10 seconds and breathe out slowly. Pranayam. So this pranayam was a practice, yogic practice, and you used to settle them. So why not now? You can actually do it. I am against all sort of medications to start with. So these are the things you can actually do. And you can repeat it 3 to 10 times. And that will settle you, that will bring calm and peace to your mind. Traditional meditation is another good way. So you can consider that. A lot of yogic practice, yoga is being done to relieve stress. And I think Mr. Modi is a big fan of yogic practice. So, and a lot of colleges and Baba Ramdev and some of those people there, they are leading figures in yoga. So you need to actually practice this. And some of the school and colleges have made it compulsory, so you need to do that. Simple thing is to take a walk. Walking a brisk walk in open air, get outdoors, get some fresh air and take a walk. Even you don't get time to walk outside your college, walk within the periphery of the campus, walk in the campus, walk in the green area of your campus. Take a lot of fresh air in, because I know outside could be very congested, it's not safe, you might not have a walkway for pedestrians, so there are a lot of vehicular traffics. So one has to be careful. But inside the campus, you would have green area. Most of our campuses in India and abroad have set out green areas for recreation. And you can easily avail of this thing and just get your balance back. You are de-stressing yourself. I find a lot, a group of students, they like reading interesting books. That will relax them. So go to the college library, pick up a book of interest and read it. And read it chapter by chapter. You don't have to read it, finish from one end to the other end at the same time. That will relax you. Sit down somewhere nice and read a nice book. Laughter is the best medicine was in research I just for a long time. It is true. When you are laughing, you are de-stressing yourself. So laugh with friends and family as much, and see some comic episodes or something which will make you laugh. That will de-stress you immediately. Napping for 20 to 30 minutes whenever you get a chance also reduces your stress level, and is good as well, because you are resting your body. So if you get a chance, do that. Why? Because the stress hormones will be much less when you are sleeping than when you are actually waking up and doing things. So that will rest yourself. And ultimately what happens after a good rest, that brings your focus back. So you need to actually do that. Exercising regularly is also recommended. Everybody does not have a nearby gym to go to, or the facilities are not there, or the finances are not there. You don't need a gym. All you need to do is home aerobics. You can do all of these exercises at home, and it will be comfortable for you, and you can do this thing at your space. Then continuing with this topic, good music is always relaxing. So listen to some classical music or some good music you like, that will relax you by reducing your blood pressure levels and cortisol levels in your body. So you need to do that. Good diet, as I mentioned earlier. Eating a healthy diet with plenty of fruits and vegetables is always welcome, because that actually balances it up. It's a balanced diet, and these are actually antioxidants. There's a lot of antioxidants in fruits and vegetables. So the antioxidants will actually de-stress you and is good for health as well. So one needs to consider that. As I showed you in that picture, avoid too much of caffeine. The caffeine would be in the tea or in your coffee. Drinking too much of that actually hyperstimulates you and goes into a phase where you might not be able to sleep, and that will stress you out. I have had people, who have admitted they use drugs to keep them awake. So that means they can read throughout the night. For example, they take amphetamines. Amphetamines are not a good drug. It can addict, and it doesn't produce the result you actually want to. It only will affect your health, so please don't. We have some drugs we actually give during the examination, especially for a person who is showing anxiety, with the sweaty palms, because then it smudges the paper, the ink, and the biro and everything. So for that, if you go to your college health center, the doctor will prescribe you beta blockers. So you will get propranolol, atenolol, or bisoprolol in small doses that will get through the exam. So prescribe drug if you need be, otherwise no drug. That is the way to go about it. I find fish diet is very high in omega-3 fatty acids. This has shown to reduce the symptoms of stress. As such, a lot of our people do eat fish, so it is good. And oily fish is even better because it contains a higher amount of this omega-3 fatty acids. So do take those, and that will help you out in your day-to-day management of stress. Then looking at the specificity, developing stress coping skills. Because for this, you need to have some what you call methodology for de-stressing. So what you look at, if need be, medication like anti-anxiolytics, as I mentioned, can be used. For example, 2 milligrams of diazepam can be used to calm it down, but it is only a last resort, because by that or before that, I presume the person would have sought counseling. Counseling is the best form. So that counseling would have been done before a drug is prescribed. Then drink plenty of water. I always keep water during my lecture here. There's a glass of water, okay? This is the best form of hydration. So drink plenty of clean, potable water. When you get it, bottled water, potable water, tap water, if it's clean, just have enough of that. That is the best source of hydration. Then I have an open mind. Some of them would need a complementary and alternative medicine. We call it CAM. And acupuncture has shown some good effect, acupressure, acupuncture have shown good effect. Some go for homeopathic medicine and similar sort of thing, Ayurvedic, homeopathic, those sort of thing. I have an open mind because of allopathy, we need evidence-based medicine, which has gone through field trials, which we call the specific sort of phase trials, and it goes through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Even now, the vaccines we have got for COVID passed through the phase 3 trials, then only it was given to humans. So that is sometimes lacking in these medications. So one has to be careful. But if you are taking this and you are taking your Western medicine, do tell your doctor, because there's a lot of side effects when you mix these sort of medicines together. So that's one of the things I need to actually say so. As I said, counseling is the best psychotherapy. And there are people trained in psychotherapy who will actually intervene and do as much. You need sometimes multiple sessions of psychotherapy to get over whatever is necessary to help you out. And then we have also a specific thing, we do it in a hospital here. It's cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. So they are specialists trained in this, and they will guide you through this. They'll give you modules, of therapy, through staging, and you can go through that, and it's very useful, Then mindfulness. Mindfulness is something which is good, and a lot of some societies in India and some religious group, they also practice this, Sri Sri is one of them, I think. They do this mindfulness, which is basically stress reduction, and it's called MBSR. So a lot of them actually do it, and that's why a lot of crowd gather in these sort of society meetings or religious gatherings, because at the end you are de-stressing them. So this is what thinking, but this is for the general public. We don't want students to be there. And then the most important thing I find is just change your negative thinking. Be positive. Be assertive, be positive. We always say, I can do it. I'm the best. I can do it. And that changes everything. And the stress level actually goes down because it brings up the confidence level. Because if the confidence level is down, your stress level is high. For anything, your confidence level is high, the stress level is down. So they are indirectly proportional to each other. So this is one of the things I always say that you must practice, Then taking care of yourself. Taking care of yourself is a must, because the presentation matters. Wherever you go to an interview or you are working in an office, you are shabbily dressed, you are not shaven, or you have not combed the hair or something, some problem, or the dress is inappropriate. It affects, and that the negative vibe will come back to you. They will you'll feel that the perception will be there. So do take care of yourself. The daily hygiene maintenance has to be there. We also link to the ADLs. ADLs are the activity of daily living. So the ADLs are linked to this. So do that. And to avoid the burnt out syndrome, which is a major problem that is recognized now as a separate entity, that needs to be prevented, because if you are burnt out, you are losing everything at the end of the day. So how to avoid that are these three things, Engage in indoor outdoor sports. If you are not able to go outdoor, COVID restrictions are there at the moment. That's not the end of the story or the end of everything. You have indoor things, you can do indoor sports, aerobic exercises, or you can play small games, caroms or some other game, you can do it, or if you have a little garden, then you can actually do some outdoors as well. But it need not be that you have to go to a public park or somewhere else 5 kilometers away. The restrictions are there, travel restrictions are there. So don't, you create your own space and you engage in activity there, And I find gardening or tree planting is very soothing. Sometimes people engage in that. Do not think that is only meant for the retirees, that after retirement, you stick to your garden and your trees, and before that, your mali or your gardener is there, to look after this. Do it yourself. You'll get a lot of pleasure out of it. and you will also get de-stressing, because these are very de-stressing ways of doing things, And I also find that with this 21st century devoted to climate change, it is a small input you are actually putting in for climate change. Because climate change, the quickest way of recovery is to bring in more greenery into the area. So planting trees is one of the best methods. There are a lot of other methods how to actually check the deterioration in the climate change, but this is a very positive method to bring it about. So the mantra is, as I said, yes, I can cope with stress and anxiety. The salient point of this I find is very productive because you get a lot of feedbacks about your behavior. So be polite to others, they will be polite to you. So this is one of the things, especially for the student population, I always say that you are nice to a person and you are polite to a person, that person has no reason to hit you back. That person will respect you and be polite to you, will be friendly to you. So it starts from you. If you do whatever is good for the other person will actually return that to you. So at the end, I need to share my acknowledgement to the Soviet University, the Chancellor, Vice Chancellor, Gango, UP India, and of course to our host for today, Professor Dr. Gunjan Agarwal, who is the Professor of Liberal Arts and Languages in Soviet University, and she's the Dean as well. And then our moderator, because we'll have probably question and answer, so she will be busy as well to moderate. Mrs. Ritu Sama, who's the Assistant Professor, School of Liberal Arts and Languages, Soviet University. So thank you so much for your time and for listening to this lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for grace the session and enlighten us with your valuable views and for giving us your valuable time. It's a privilege to having you as a speaker in this program. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Now I would like to take the questions from the participants, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. My first question is, how can we make a study plan?
Very good question.
Yes.
As I said before, the study plan can be made according to the individual taste. You can't have a general study plan. So as I said, some people would like to actually make a plan where they will study in the evening or at night. Somebody will do the reverse. They will wake up early in the morning and will study during that time. Or somebody will actually study in the late afternoon. So do according to that, because as I said, study plan is the solid foundation for an examinee or a student to actually do well in the exam. Do not leave everything to the last moment. Throughout the year, you have a study plan, you stick to it, you'll cover a lot of ground, you will do a lot of material covering, and you can also do a bit of research during that time, and that will help you out. So the timing of the study plan is important, as well as the duration, because do not actually take the duration to a very sort of a high level, that you are studying for 6-7 hours, something like that. That will tire you out. You will not remember as much as you would remember in the first hour or two. So short duration, regular. Regularity is more important. Duration can be short, but you need to repeat that every day. Every 24 hours, you need to come back to your books. That is important. That's the way you plan.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for your suggestion.
Okay.
I could follow this. And now the second question is, most of the teenagers in India are found to deal with emotion disturbances affecting their performance in exams. Do you suggest any solution for this, sir?
Yeah, this is actually a very good question and very chronic question. The other day I was speaking to somebody on this only. Look at this. There's a peer pressure to our Indian students, okay? The peer pressure is actually coming from the family, immediate family or the extended family. There's this conception, that you have to be a doctor, engineer, or an IS officer or an IPS officer, and the pressure builds up because of the competition. In our times, 65%, 70% was good enough to get us into a college, a good college, and passing the exams, for a medical college, the entrance exam. Now the marks have gone up to their 90s, It is almost impossible for a student to actually strive to get that mark, whereas there's a lot of pressure being built up from the family, that this is what you want, because we won't be able to otherwise help you into getting admission into a good college. So that brings in a lot of emotional conflict between the student and the family. The other thing one has to look at is the siblings in the family. Somebody has done well, somebody has gone into a good college, so the pressure is there. You don't have to worry about that. My suggestion is do things according to ability and do things according to your choice. If you want to be a musician, be a musician, don't listen to anybody. You want to go into fine arts, you don't want to do science, that's fine. Just stick as an art student, You don't have to go into science to do something else, So the emotional conflict is actually a responsibility of so many stakeholders in this to reduce it. And that reduction is not only on the student or on somebody aspiring to be a student or something in higher institution of learning or something. In the school, I have seen this is built up is in school. So the basic is getting damaged. And there's a lot of arguments when in the evening at dinner or something like that, it breaks up, and the emotional liability on the students is huge, the pressure is huge. I read unfortunate articles where the self-harm is there, the student has indulged in self-harm. So these are the things we have to do. At the end, what is life? Life is to actually get you some calmness, some peace, some purpose, and a pleasure. If you are not having pleasure in a science subject and you want an art subject, so be it. It's not the end of the day. You can still, in the art subject, you can still become an IS or an IPS officer if you qualify those exams. You don't have to be a science student, So, and if you are in a science way, if you like it, go ahead. Because these are vocational, and if you are vocational based, good. There are other vocational careers which come up here for the people who actually want it. We have carpentry courses. For example, in colleges, we are training carpenters. So they are doing carpentry courses. We are also doing a lot of training for people who want to do arts, painting, for example, there are painting courses here. So those things have to be looked at. And if you don't look at that from a positive frame of mind, nothing is going to work out. And it's very unfortunate that the parents are largely responsible, I would say, for this, because the aspiration of the parents and the comparison with the neighbor or with a colleague is too much, and they don't want to lose out on that. For them, I must say, your child is precious, your child is different, your child has a role to play in life. So you support your child, then comparing your child with your neighbor's child. What's the neighbor's child is doing, that's good. He's doing something good, but you are not responsible for your neighbor's child. You are responsible for your own child. So that's the way you are responsible for your own student. You are not responsible for another college's student. So you are giving mentoring your own student. So your idea of what you call communication into some sort of assurance for their building materials or building of life, the abilities, and those sort of things should be more specific. That's all I need to say. And the emotional level, the emotional conflict is going to go down. You just do it, in a few days' time, we'll see the change. The child is much more happier, child is much more respectable, and child loves you more because there's no conflict. So these are conflict resolutions. So you can do that.
Yeah, sir. Yeah, it's a good answer for this. And we should take on this priority that do that which we want. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Encourage your type to do what he want to be astronaut. Encourage him to be astronaut. We have a Chandrayaan project and different project coming up in India, so he doesn't have to go to NASA. It can be done in India. And don't think it's abnormal. If If a child comes and to you and says, Mama, I want to be astronaut, don't laugh at him, just say, yes, why not?
Yeah,
That's the way to build confidence.
yeah, encourage the child.
Yeah, encourage the child and the student.
Okay. Sir, my next question is what, yeah, ये तो हो गया. Parents ही मतलब कोई role निभा सकते हैं. Ma'am, if you want to ask something then.
Yeah, actually, the next question is what role parents should play in reducing the exam stress of students? I think you have already given.
Answered all that.
Yes, of course. So I would like to ask one question. Should mentoring of students be made mandatory in colleges? So what do you think about it? Nowadays, this is a culture and fashion in India. In most of the universities and colleges, we do have mentoring system. So do you think that this type of mentoring system should be mandatory?
Okay, now there, before I answer that question, there are two things. One is, are you mentoring a whole group of students or are you mentoring an individual student?
Generally, there is a culture we mentor the whole group.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Now, if that's the reason I was asking, mentoring a single student would also cause problem because there will be a lot of problem from the parents of other student and the student themselves. But if you are mentoring the whole group, it is a good thing because you have become the peer, you have become the chosen peer, and you are mentoring that. Prior to this, there used to be small groups of students who used to go for tutorials, the tutorials after classes or extra tutorials sort of thing. This has expanded to more systemic mentoring, and the systemic mentoring is good because one of the advantages of systemic mentoring is that those less able students get a fresh chance, to pick up. And that is why even if it's made mandatory, it's not going to harm because
Very
the
true.
classroom, in the classroom, they are differential in absorption of what the teacher is saying or what the teacher wants to actually give to the students. The absorption is a bit different. So some are left out a bit, and because of their ability, that's less able. We would need that, For example, this is not happening there, but we have it. We have a group called intellectually disabled students. They are differently able. They are not 100%. Causes are so many, and they are not able to do it. So now they have specialist needs school for them, but specialist needs school has actually taken them apart from the society because then the society thinks there's something wrong with this student. Okay, so now the shift is to the Dutch model. In Ireland, there's a lot of public support coming up for these students to have mentoring and then done in the class. So instead of actually separating them out, they actually have a special needs attendant or assistant. So SNS sits with them in the class during the process, and the absorption is found to be much better. So if this can happen to a differently able child or a student, it will be much more beneficial for an able child or an able student, the mentoring process. So there are some other structures which the university will know, like that you have to look at that. But from a philosophical point of view, or from actual studies, which has been done in the past in so many centers worldwide, it has value. Mentoring has value, and so why not mandatory? If it's a group, so be it. It'll be good.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. So, being a host, it is my pleasure to propose a vote of thanks and acknowledge the contribution of one and all who directly and indirectly supported us. So, first of all, my sincere thanks to Almighty God who have given us everything. I would like to thank our respected speaker who spent his busiest time gracing the occasion. Today, we had the opportunity to hear your thoughts, You are very elaborate and well researched, well structured. You have discussed all the things, how to identify stress, causes of stress, and you have given a very, valuable, helpful, and practical de-stressing techniques to the students and all the participants. So, you shared your scholarly observation with us. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot. And I'm grateful to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, and respected Registrar, sir, for their constant support and encouragement. And I wish to thank all the participants, our organizing team, including our technical team of the university. Thank you all. Thank you, Ritu. Thank you, Akhilesh ji. And once again, thank you very much. Jai Hind, Namaskar, Jai Bharat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
ma'am.
you so much, Professor Agarwal, for your kind words again. But it was a pleasure. Believe me, it was a pleasure to come and attend this webinar. And I hope sometime in the future we can do it again. Thank you.
Definitely,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes,
Definitely, sir. And it's our pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.